Welcome to Level Up Tribes. Level Up Tribes provides resources to help you attain the necessary resources to level up your mind, body, and soul and realize your full potential. It is about exploring, learning, providing you with the tools from the experts for you to create a better version of yourself. I am your host, Agnes Goewey, and welcome, Tribes. Don Joseph Goewey is the executive director of the DeMello Spirituality Center. Previously, Don was the director of a human performance firm with the mission of alleviating stress and elevating the experience of work. He is also the author of the Amazon bestseller, The End of Stress, 4 Steps to Rewiring Your Brain. Previous to the DeMello Spiritual Center, Don managed the Department of Psychiatry at Stanford Medical School and ran a regional emergency medical service system, and for 12 years headed the ICAH. The DeMello Spiritual Center is a nonprofit organization founded in 1987 at Fordham University with the mission of preserving, protecting the work of Anthony DeMello. Anthony DeMello, born in 1931, is one of the seminal forces in the modern mindfulness movement, influencing thought leaders such as Eckhart Tolle, Neil Strauss, and many more. So welcome to Level Up Tribes podcast. Again, it's an honor to have you here with us today. The book was very insightful. I have many notes, but before we dive deep into the book, tell us about your own journey and how you came across the work of Anthony DeMello and how fate kind of brought you back to lead the center.
Well, I came into this spiritual work with people like Anthony DeMello, Jerry Jompolsky. I came into it actually the hard way. I came into this work years ago when I experienced what you might call a perfect storm of stress. I had lost an executive level position at Stanford Medical School that I had really devoted a decade climbing the career ladder to reach. And then 9 days after getting fired, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor that the doctors warned me, could leave me seriously disabled and potentially unable to ever work again. And I was married with 4 children, and my marriage was in trouble. And suddenly my life was coming apart at the seams, and it seemed that there was pretty much nothing I could do to stop the impending catastrophe coming my way. And as it turned out, I had to wait 6 weeks for the surgery, and the first 2 weeks were just emotionally painful. I was a wreck. And every night I would wake up 3 o'clock in the morning and stare out to the cold, dark night, terrified by what might happen to me and to my family. And then one night I reached a point where I seriously questioned which was worse, the dire problems the doctors predicted that might happen to me in the future, or the abject fear that was happening in me every day, all day long for the last couple of weeks. And the answer was pretty clear. Fear was worse. The bone-chilling fear I experienced was consuming me. It was depleting the strength I needed, to get through this. And so for the next half hour, I used a process I had learned from a very wise person, actually a pretty famous person, but he had taught it to me, but I had never used it much. I used it enough where I knew how to work with it, but what it involved was being diligently aware of every fearful, painful thing, that I was thinking, and being willing to feel it and observe the thoughts driving these emotional reactions, these painful emotional reactions, and seeing them as in me. The fury and the distress was in me, not necessarily in reality, not even necessarily in my situation. And to my amazement, what I saw was that when I embraced the pain, the upset, the fear, it passed. And I experienced relief each time I let myself experience the painful mental negativity. It just dropped of its own weight. And the more I practiced this that evening, 3 o'clock in the morning, the calmer I became until about a half an hour into this, my mental state had really shifted from relief to a much more expansive feeling of peace. that seemed to really encourage optimism. And this time, when I looked out that window into the cold, dark night, what I saw was the stillness of moonlight, this beautiful sheen of moonlight shining on the trees that made the night look almost sacred. And I was hoping that, that was grace. So I made the decision right then and there to work at letting go of fear and stress in this way whenever it raised its ugly head, as I faced whatever I had to face that day. And every day was a new challenge. And every time I faced it in this way, embracing what I had to go through, owning that these feelings were in me, watching, observing as they passed, every time it delivered me to this feeling of peace, and out of which a sense of optimism arose. And I began to realize that this sense of optimism was happiness, a certain kind of happiness, the kind of happiness you get when you're centered in faith. And I discovered that being at peace was not as hard as I thought it might be. You know, stress and anxiety were hard. That was very clear to me by then. And it was peace that made everything easier. And it allowed me to tap the creative power to visualize the outcome that I wanted instead of oppressing myself with the picture that fear was painting. And during the remainder of that time before the surgery, as I recall, I didn't entertain one fearful thought. You know, I certainly had fearful thoughts, but I practiced letting them pass in this way. And the surgery, as it turned out, was a big surprise to everyone, to the doctors, especially to me. It was a complete success, spared me a life of disability. And I was offered actually another leadership position in the medical school. The chairman of that new department wanted my positive attitude in his team. He had heard of him. So it was clear to me that none of this would have happened if I hadn't shifted my mindset this way. And if, you know, the neuroscientists back then didn't know what they know now, but if they did, what they would have told me is that my shift in attitude over those 4 weeks had literally rewired my brain to quiet those fear reactions, which in turn established that mind-body connection that gave me the best chance for a positive medical outcome. And eventually I left the university to start a whole new career, one more aligned with my change of heart. At first, I was a director of an institute for about 12 years that pioneered a psycho-spiritual approach to overcoming catastrophic life events. It was called the Center for Attitudinal Healing. And it was founded by the famous psychiatrist Jerry Jampolsky. He wrote the book Love is Letting Go of Fear. And he was also the father of a school of psychology based on attitude. And the agency worked with some of the most stressful situations people face. We worked with life-threatening situations like AIDS. AIDS was at its height in San Francisco at the time. We worked with cancer, people with ALS, people with very serious diseases. We ran grief groups with parents who lost children, probably the most difficult situation I've seen people face. We also worked in prisons with men serving life sentences. And in 1995, the U.S. State Department sent us into refugee camps in Croatia and Bosnia to work with refugees to help them deal with the severe post-traumatic stress that they had suffered from that genocidal war. And this approach helped people transcend the fear and the stress endemic in these desperate situations. So to move from being overwhelmed like I was by circumstances to empower a way of being that made them larger than circumstances. And it wasn't uncommon at the center to hear somebody say, as hard as this illness has been, or as hard as these circumstances have been, I wouldn't trade them in for the spiritual growth they facilitated in me. And the center eventually earned an international reputation, and I think it was in 2005, it received the Excellence in Medicine Award from the American Medical Association. So the work at the Mellow Spirituality Center, where I work now, it's much the same work. It's pointing to the power we possess within ourselves that is blocked by the way we've been conditioned to be stressed and afraid.
You've done amazing work saving your life alone through the positive mindset, but just the lives, from here, United States, all the way to Bosnia. Have you checked back? Like, have you done like a follow-up to see how those people are doing from that research, from
Most of
that?
them are doing okay. Most of them are
Yeah.
doing okay. The peace came to the country. The center that we helped found there is still going.
Okay.
'Cause it was a extraordinary experience. I think I got more from the experience myself than I facilitated for other people. It was a tremendous blessing,
Yes.
and the acts of courage and faith for people to center them in the middle of all of that, to center themselves in love.
Oh.
Human beings are very resilient. Human beings are very courageous. Ordinary people are capable of extraordinary things.
So how did you end up directing the Spirituality Center? How did that come about?
That came about because the board of directors and a wonderful foundation called the Luke 638 Foundation got together and wanted to extend the work of Anthony DeMello even further into the world. You know, he's been a very strong influence, DeMello, on all these years on some really great spiritual teachers like Eckhart Tolle or Ajaxante,
Mm,
Thomas More. And even though he died in 1987, suddenly his books continued to sell. 2 million book sales to date. And he's maintained this enormous influence on our spiritual culture. And I think it's partly because DeMello has such a clear way of messaging um, really important spiritual messages. You know, he experienced an inner awakening that he said revolutionized his life, and he was able to communicate his awakening in a way that, you know, that really feels true. It sounds true when you read him. It rings true. It opens the possibility of a more enlightened, more happier, more peaceful life possibility for yourself. It opens that up inside of you. He he has a way with language that really evokes that. So he communicates in this very concise and clear way. And these people said, you know, we need to get him. The people on the board of trustees of the DeMello Spirituality Center, as well as the philanthropists, they said we need to move them more out into the world. And so they did a national search and they settled on me to help them do that.
beautiful. And so for those that are listening and don't know Anthony DeMello, he was born in Mumbai, British India. Did I?
Yes,
And he was an Indian Jesuit priest. Am
that's
I
right. He was a
pronouncing?
Catholic priest. It's a
Yes,
Jesuit. Yeah, he was a
Jesuit.
Jesuit Catholic priest, right, from
Yes, and
India.
yes, and he was also a spiritual teacher, a writer, a public speaker. He has like a little blend of the East and the West, like kind of put together
That's right.
with resonated with my own belief system. And I'm just so excited that you have reintroduced him to the world by editing his book. Um, and the book is called Stop Fixing Yourself, Wake Up, All is Well. And so let's dive deep into this book and what made you edit his work and why now?
Well, I and the trustees felt it was time for a new book and one that organized his material in a new way. And we ended up centering on this theme of stop fixing yourself, which is central to Anthony DeMello's teachings. And we felt like at this point in time in the spiritual journey that Americans and I think worldwide that people have been on, that this idea of stop fixing yourself and basically waking up to this beauty and power of your essential nature is a message that people are ready for. Everybody's done a lot of inner work, and even if they haven't done and a lot of inner work, everybody's graduating from the College of Hard Knocks. And
I love that.
yet as we go through, as we take stock of where we are in our lives, where we are within ourselves, where we are in terms of the relationship we extend to other people, particularly people important to us, that most people come to the conclusion with all the spiritual work that I've done, I haven't found what I was looking for, or I haven't arrived at where I thought I was headed. And the one thing that they know is that they feel separated from this essential nature, from this natural state of happiness and of peace. And DeMello's message is wake up. You have the capacity to wake up to it. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's still there for the taking, and that I call him Tony. What Tony is telling us that we were born naturally happy, but we lost contact with it. In fact, we are happy right here, right now, but we don't realize it. Happiness isn't something we go out and acquire because we literally have it already. When science wants to take a look at what really is essential human nature, they look at children. Before children get contaminated by the way society is going to socialize them. And children are naturally happy. With my own grandchildren, when they were little, I would throw, if they were getting antsy, I would throw crayons, blank pieces of paper out on a dining room table. They were happy for hours. They're naturally creative. They're naturally curious. They're naturally happy. Well, we've lost that beautiful happiness you see in children. But often, and often the only happiness we know is a momentary respite from negative emotions. It's not the lasting happiness of children. It's not that kind of constant state of happiness, which is kind of an atmosphere. It doesn't require a reason. You smile for no reason at all. But, we were born free, but we're trapped in limited thinking. We were born with an open heart that stress and fear so easily closes. We were born gifted beings of immeasurable worth, but often people talk about how they feel that they're not good enough, their struggles with shame. And, one of the core messages that Anthony Novello brings to us is that there is a divinity of joy within us and surrounding us. It's there to make life meaningful and beautiful and rich. But our awareness of its presence is blocked. And as a result, the world we often see is a threatening world, even when there's no real threat present. They did this study at Cornell University. They had people write down their worries over, extended period of time, and then to go back and look over those worries and determine which ones did not actually happen. And what the study found was 85% of what people worried about didn't happen. And of course, when I give that statistic, the pessimists say, well, what about the 15% where it did happen? And what the research found is that 79% of those people, those 15%, they found that they were surprised, but they had the strength to deal with the problem, that they had the creativity to move through the problem, which meant that 97% of the times these people were worrying, there was nothing to worry about. But, it's as if we're all hypnotized to see a world that's not there and not to see the one that is there, the one that God, the universe, all that is, whatever you want to call it, created. In other words, DeMello is saying we're asleep and we need to wake up. And that's what this book is about. You don't need to change anything. People would come to Tony all the time and say, what do I need to change myself? And he'd say, I got a big surprise for you. You don't need to do anything. You have everything you need already. The only reason that, we have everything we need every moment to be happy. And the only reason we're ever unhappy is because we're focused on what we don't have rather than what we have right now.
So happiness would be now.
Here and now.
Kids find that happiness because they're in the now all the time, this moment.
Exactly.
So be like a kid.
That's exactly right. So you're right. It's moving from being a seeker to being a finder. That's what DeMello is about, what this book is about. It's hard to find a completely happy person. It really is only 4% of the population. And the irony is, as I said, we were born happy, but society programs it out of us by stamping into us the belief that happiness is found out there in the world somewhere, out there in the future somewhere. And if we work long and hard, success will come. And out of that, happiness will follow. And we've all followed that formula. And 10 years later, we realize that success has come without fulfillment. And that's failing at living. Happiness doesn't come from the world, not the radiant happiness of a child that's constant, that makes you smile for no reason. And the truth is, as I said, there's not a single moment in our lives when we don't have everything we need to be happy.
Yeah.
And, the best part of the message of stop fixing yourself is it means that you're not broken. You're
Yeah.
not some problem to be resolved. You're okay. And if there's a problem, it's the way you and I were programmed to believe that without something or some special person or some result, we cannot be happy. It's a false belief. You
Yeah.
know, we the older we get, the more we come to realize that you don't acquire or earn happiness or peace. You have it already. Drop the false belief and the struggle with the world drops and peace arises all by itself. And then you have this recognition in that here and now moment that, my God, all is well because you are.
Yes. Yes.
Even if things remain a mess, even if the problem's still staring you in the face, all is well because you are well. And the belief that happiness is out there waiting for you in the future, it's what keeps you out of the present moment. And in
Oh,
this moment, as you were saying, there's always that freedom to be at peace with ourselves. And in that stillness, the joy within us it comes alive. And in coming alive, it dissolves the stress and negativity we're holding, the judgments we're holding, the grievances we're holding on to. And we've all felt those wonderful moments. They
yes.
come and go. And
Yes.
what stop fixing yourself is about is that joy coming and not going, that joy coming and staying.
Yes. That's one of the things that 2020, through the pandemic gave me. I'm a very active mind kind of person. I'm always on the go. I have to do this. I have to learn this. I have to seek this, right? Always evolving. And 2020 gave me that pause that I needed, that stillness, to look within. And I'm a very extroverted kind of person, and I embrace being alone. I embrace what my higher self, while meditating, what was coming through. I learned so much about myself in stillness. And so reading the book, I highlighted a lot, but what kept coming up for me throughout the book was be still, observe, awareness, discernment. And at the end, you are well. I kept writing that the same thing in each chapter because, like you said, like we are okay if we just if we just observe, right? There was one point in the book that talks about when we start with I am. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on the word and how we start the I am? Do you know what I'm
Yeah,
referring to?
I do. We define ourselves by so many externals, one of them being our bodies, one of them being our personality. And then, it has to do with our careers and it goes on and on. We have all of these identities and they come and go. You know, you're in one job one year, you're in another job another year. You change, your personality changes as you grow up. Um, the one thing that seems to be a constant with us is that we've been programmed to look to the world to to meet our needs and satisfy our demands. And we're also programmed to upset ourselves when life doesn't go the way our programming says it should.
Yeah.
And you free yourself from that oppressive fear of failing through awareness. It's just a simple process, like you described, of stepping back from the upset, the distress, the hurry up, the I need to prove myself, I need to be accepted. Um, all of those things. I need to. I'm afraid of this situation. I go to the mailbox. I pull out and this happened a couple months ago. I pulled out a letter from the IRS, and I was terrified for about 10 seconds and, until I talked myself into opening it. It was nothing. It was something, but not what I was afraid of. So, so what happens is you allow yourself to embrace what you're feeling. And so much of what we do with our feelings is we push them away, especially men. And it's difficult to embrace an uncomfortable feeling, especially one like fear. And but what ends up happening is uh, through a willingness to feel what you feel, you begin to step into a kind of consciousness of not being afraid of being afraid, or not being stressed of being stressed, or not condemning yourself for judging yourself. That's kind of an intermediary step that you're taking, and then you allow that whatever feeling you're having to 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 express itself, to feel
Yeah,
it, in your heart. And it's uncomfortable,
it
and
is.
sometimes it swells. Sometimes if it's a strong fear, it can swell, like me, staring out the window into the cold dark night when I had a brain tumor. um, and you just write it, and then what you begin to know, and then you own it. All you just basically say is, this is in me,
Yeah.
not necessarily happening to me, necessarily something being imposed on me.
If someone is having an anxiety, I am anxious, and is saying, I am anxious, how can that person reword that so the brain doesn't, I guess, program that person to think that they're an
Well,
anxious?
doesn't identify with it, right? So what your brain does is, when you say, I'm afraid,
Yeah.
is that it gets active. It believes you. It believes that whatever it is that you're afraid of is real. It can't tell. Your brain can't tell the difference between a real danger and one that your brain made up. Like me at the mailbox with the IRS letter. Prior to opening it up, I invented all kinds of scenarios. So it's it's a question of recognizing that from the start, that this is happening in me, not to me.
Yeah.
And then from that point, you step back and you just watch, and you allow the feelings come up. You watch the thoughts you're thinking and the emotions that those thoughts are carrying. And what eventually happens is that, as you observe those thoughts, those feelings, they pass. Everything passes in life, especially emotions. They pass really quickly. And so, what the Tibetans, Buddhists would tell you is that you're this blue sky, your essential nature, this vast, open, lovely blue sky that gets clouded over. But the clouds pass. And if you allow them, they will pass. If you don't allow them to pass, they swell, they turn into rumination, they sort of take over, and they become your life. And so, one of the things that happens with somebody who practices this very simple process of awareness, of bringing into awareness, especially the negativity that's going on inside of you, owning it. This is happening in me, not to me. And then just sitting back and not messing with it, not trying to fix anything, just letting everything be as it is, feeling it. What you will observe is it eventually passes, and now you're free. And now you're free to be in the present moment. And in the present moment, freedom is always available. Peace is always available right here, right now. Worry is always available to you when you're worrying about the future, or upsets are always available to you when you're dragging the past into the present moment. But when you've used this awareness process to free yourself from that, for those clouds to pass by, and leaving you uncontaminated, now you step into this present moment, and you see right here, right now, everything really is okay. I'm okay. All really is well. If I can make it to here and just relax and let go to just being quiet and silent. There's something that arises within us, which you were talking about finding. And what you begin to understand as you do this more and more is that as you step back from that commotion, from that suffering, that mind-made suffering that you've been enduring all this time, as you step back from it and observe it and watch it, you come to the understanding, to the clarity that that is not you. You are not your upset. You're this
Oh,
vast open space.
that's it.
And that's an extraordinary feeling when you actually see that. I had an experience of it one night recently where I woke up in the middle of the night, and because I use the awareness process a lot, you know, I live from it all day
Yeah.
long. I've become aware of something that was running my life for a long time, and it was this kind of free floating anxiety that I had made some terrible mistake and I was really going to get punished from it. And it would operate in a very unconscious kind of way. And it could sour my mood for the whole day. I would just come up, this anxiety, and I was operating out of this anxiety. Well, one day I came across it, and I was using the awareness process. And as I opened up to it, I really felt it. It put me back in my childhood. I had a rough childhood. I had a really rough stepfather who, everything I did according to him was wrong, and he relished punishing me for nothing.
Uh,
And that got programmed into my brain, and I was operating from that unconsciously most of my life until I began to bring it into awareness. And one of the things that awareness does is that it lifts that suffering out of out of where it's operating unconsciously into a conscious awareness where you can now relate to it. And I came to understand that's where that's coming from. It has nothing to do with the present state of things in my life. It has to do with something got programmed into my brain years ago as a kid. And
oh
I
my
could,
God.
in understanding it, I could move towards forgiving my stepfather and releasing myself even further. Well, one night I woke up in the middle of the night and boom, that I either had a dream or something triggered it. I was right back in that space and I processed it again with awareness in the way that I'm talking about here.
Yes.
And suddenly I was in this crystal clear space and I was looking at it and I knew for certain, for the first time in my life, that was not me. That what my stepfather saw as wrong, as this person who was flawed and wrong and
Yeah.
needed to be punished, that had that had more to do with him than it had anything to do with me. And I got free from it.
Yes.
It hit me right between the eyes and in the heart. That is not you.
Oh,
Speaking in first person, I looked at it. It was like I was here in this blue sky state, looking at this dark cloud as it was passing by. And I said, I am not that dark cloud. And
oh,
there was a feeling of freedom and dignity that
yes.
emerged out of that. And so that's what DeMello was trying to help us work into. And that's what he means by the message of stop fixing yourself.
Yes.
It's enough for you just to be aware. If you would
Yes.
just be aware, if you just do this for 2 weeks, at the end of that 2 weeks, you would be amazed at the change that's happened within you all by itself.
Yes. He talks about attachments a lot too.
Yes,
And
yes, he does.
and I had to think back, like, and I made notes. I'm like, I'm attached to a lot of stuff that when I don't have it, I'm in a very dark, unhappy place.
Yes, they cost you everything.
Yes.
Attachment, the way Tony defines attachment as an emotional state of clinging, caused by the belief that without this thing or this person or getting some result like success, you cannot be happy. And, at some point today, I invite your listeners to write down, to get a blank piece of paper. And at the top of it, right? I cannot be happy unless or until, and then fill in the blank. And
Mm.
they are going to be surprised at how many things that they write. And, for example, when I do this exercise with people I work with, they'll write, I cannot be happy unless my boss appreciates me, or unless I get that promotion, or I cannot be happy until out of debt, or I cannot be happy until the pandemic is over, or even I cannot be happy until I'm no longer neurotic. And, people can write, or I cannot be happy until my teenage daughter or son treats me with respect. And
Yes.
then to look the list over and consider that these thoughts, these beliefs are blocking your natural state of happiness. They're blocking you, the love in your heart. And
Yes.
spend some time seeing each of these things you're clinging to for what they really are, which is suffering.
Yes.
As you get this list down, you look at it. I always invite people to say, "Behold my suffering."
Yes.
It's a nightmare. It can turn into a nightmare, and they can cause, of course, if you get one of your attachments, it's going to be the cause for excitement, some pleasure on the one hand, but also you'll notice that they also come with worry and insecurity and tension. What do I do if I lose this, or how do I end up keeping this? And if you look carefully, you'll see that the one and only thing that causes your unhappiness is these attachments. They're
Yes.
composed of those two elements. The positive one, which is the flash of pleasure when you achieve or attain, your attachment, but the negative element that is the sense of threat and tension that's always accompanies these attachments. That perfect image of an attached person is that DeMello gives us is someone gobbling up food, who's in a concentration camp. And he's one hand, he's got the food to his mouth, and with the other, he's protecting his food from his neighbor he's afraid will grab it from him at any moment. So he never lowers his guard. That's an attachment.
Yes.
You drop that, and you're suddenly now you're okay.
I know.
Wonderful things inside of you, soft, sweet, wonderful things begin to emerge.
Yes. And that was
Little,
one of the four truths that is listed in the
yes,
book.
yes, yeah. The four truths, and next to them are the four false beliefs.
Yeah.
The biggest one being you cannot be happy without something you're attached to,
Yeah.
and that you consider really precious, and you're forgetting that there's not a single moment in your life when you have everything you need to be happy. If you just get to the present moment, and count your blessings. The second false belief is happiness is out there in the future.
Yes.
Right here, right now, you're happy, and you don't know it. Literally, most people don't know it. And it's because of your false beliefs, your distorted perceptions that have gotten you caught up in fears and anxieties and attachments and conflicts. And if you could see through these illusions, you'd realize you're happy. You realize you're whole. You realize you're safe.
Yes.
And then, the other false belief is that happiness will come if you can manage to change your situation, get all the things that you want to get. And it's just not true. We stupidly squander so much energy trying to rearrange the world and change other people. And but what makes you happy or unhappy is not the world. It's the openness of your heart. It's the
Oh, say it
thoughts in
again,
your head.
Don. Say it again, Don, because that is the truth.
Yeah. If it's happiness you seek, you can stop wasting your energy trying to cure your baldness, if that's an issue, or building up an attractive body, or changing your residence or your job or your community or your lifestyle or even your personality. I think we all realize you could change every one of those things, and
Yeah.
you could have the finest looks, the most charming personality, the most pleasant surroundings, and still be miserable and unhappy. I've back in my former life when I was working at the center, I would coach people who were multimillionaires, people who had everything we thought defined a good life, and they hadn't been experienced peace in so long. They hadn't felt genuine happiness in so long. They weren't even sure it existed.
Right.
Um, but still, we waste our effort and our energy trying to get what we know really
Yes.
has never made us happy.
I
That
know.
it's not, it cannot make us happy. That old Western song. We're all out there looking for love in all the wrong places. We're looking for happiness in all the wrong places. It's turn around, go inside. That's where you will find it. And the
Yes.
first thing that you have to confront, which is why awareness is so important, is these negative feelings that are programmed into you based upon society's programming that to seek everything on the outside, to seek your happiness, to seek your rewards in the world outside you. And this isn't to say, DeMello isn't saying dropping your attachments means detaching from or renouncing the material world, going and sitting in a cave. Not at all. He's saying one uses the material world and one enjoys the material world, but one does not make one's happiness depend on the material world because the material world isn't capable of giving you that. The irony is when you detach from the material world, as you pursue success, you let go of your attachments, then you actually begin to enjoy the process of trying to succeed at life. Then you believe your self-worth and your peace and happiness. Don't believe, excuse me, that that your self-worth and peace and happiness are depending on any outcome. If you succeed, your feeling is great. That's wonderful. If you
Yeah.
don't succeed, if you fail, your happiness and your self-worth are not at stake. You don't
Yes.
place them at stake. You know that to go to experience that, what you need to do is go inside, get quiet, be present in the moment. Come to that place where you understand that you and the present moment are one and the same thing. And in that silence, let the beauty and power of your true nature emerge, and it will emerge all by itself.
Oh, what's next for DeMello Spirituality Center? Is it open to the public?
Yes.
Okay.
If people want to find out more about it, if people are interested in the book, Stop Fixing Yourself, they can get it. They can go to stopfixingyourself.com. And that page will take them to where they can buy the book. And if they do, if they buy the book through that page, they'll also get free video of a workshop that Anthony DeMello conducted at Fordham University in 1987. It's a wonderful video. They'll get that there. If they want to know more about the DeMello Spirituality Center, they can go to demellocenter.com. And what we're looking to do in the future is once we get out of the pandemic, is begin to do workshops
Okay.
on centered around Anthony's books. And we may not even have to wait for the pandemic. We're all getting pretty good at Zoom.
That's true.
We're all Zoomers now.
I know. That's wonderful. Well, I love the website of the center because it has a lot of stuff. I mean, it has the blog. It has so many quotes. It has the happiness podcast, which I like to listen to. They're like little short audio clips of his, webinars or seminars that he has conducted. And you
Yeah,
can,
he's really good at sound bites. And so
yeah,
little short podcasts, it's
yes.
wonderful. You get so much in a concise little bit from him.
Yeah, so I absolutely love it. So yes, if you're listening, make sure you check out the website and also Don's website as well to learn more about him and his own personal work. You've done amazing work.
Thank you.
And I hope that you will come back to our podcast just to talk about your books, especially the End of Stress book. I'm really interested in that one. I'm just sending a special invitation to you to come back
Oh,
and
sure.
talk
I'd love
about
to, Agnes.
that.
It was a pleasure to be on your show. It's great.
Thank you. Is there anything else that you would like to add or discuss pertaining to the book or anything else that we didn't touch on today?
I would just invite everybody to make that list of their attachments, that to write at the top of that piece of paper, I cannot be happy unless or until. And then at the end of it, when you look at it, you understand this is a cause of a lot of anxiety and angst and depression in me. Then to take a moment and step back in the way that you were talking about, Agnes, you step back from it, you move into awareness, you allow yourself to feel whatever you're feeling, especially negative feelings. You observe, it's enough for you just to watch them, remind yourself this is happening in me, and watch it pass. And when it passes, to drop into that place of silence, of quiet, and notice, then be alive for when that joy that's innate to you, and that happiness and that peace that's innate in all of us, it rises on its own. I invite everybody to do that.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it a lot.
Thank you for listening. Please visit the website at www.leveluptribes.com. And please subscribe to the podcast and share with your family and friends. Be sure to tune in to our next episode. Catch you all next time, my beloved tribes.